In previous videos, we described the who about our organization, the why we do programs and services, and what we do in programs and services. Firebirds is the next step, are how we take things to the next level and change even more lives. Firebirds is about encouraging individuals, families, and groups to roll up their sleeves and put words into action, creating a movement that uplifts thousands of individuals and families into a place of academic and economic empowerment. The power and influence of real action is that it can inspire and create real sustainable change in other people's lives. Anytime any of us can give our talent, time, and resources to accomplish a shared vision that brings equal opportunity to many people as possible, encourages personal responsibility and growth, all while promoting the endless potential of others, is something I consider worth doing wholeheartedly. What we initially will track as leading indicators to help us measure our impact in the beginning will be the number of committed adult participants annually, youth participants annually, and the number of activities in the community and how frequent. This will grow to include data that shows real change to scale in the future. What makes this movement of volunteers so powerful is that it came from the candid conversations about what is, and most importantly, what could be. After sitting around tables for the last few years with so many of you talking about the data, the systemic errors, industry frustration, and the lack of action, this is a great next step. My own personal challenge in recent years is trying to fix as many problems as I could without allowing more people to help. In a world that did not seem ready to talk about or have the right conversations, one thought kept repeating in my head like a broken record player. Our kids cannot grow up in a world like this. This led to my own irrational impatience that would get me frustrated every time someone talked about their 5 year plan to get kids or families help or resources, with my rational brain consistently pushing back on how many of them are you willing to lose while everyone else plays catch up. Is nearly 50,000 kids in school every year struggling to maintain standards acceptable? Is 75,000 adults who cannot read or write well enough to qualify for high quality jobs with very few resources to overcome those problems acceptable? Is watching our streets fill with increasing numbers of addiction, mental health needs, and food insecurity acceptable? We, and yes, I mean we, are not creating the kind of culture that creates an environment that holds us all to the rigorous standards of our own personal potential. And this has allowed us to negate the personal responsibility that we all share in these trends. To be clear, this is not about any one system or function, it is about us as a community. This has happened on all our watch. And this is hard to hear and even harder to admit that we each have played some small part in creating it, unintentionally and unknowingly in almost every level, absolutely. But now we can see and know there are problems. What do we do? So, to move on, because we are no longer here to talk about the problems, we can leave that for social media critics and opinion editors. It reminds me of a conversation I had with one of you about 2 years ago. This new friend looked at me and said something to the effect of, I don't have time for just talking about problems. I am the person you point at a brick wall and I'll help you break it down. To be honest, that is a little bit paraphrased, but it got the point across. Firebirds is about doing something to create positive change. At the very core of all these problems is a connection to community and fundamental education. They go hand in hand with everything we have talked about. For me personally, I have been in over my head, drowning in data, feeling lost, sad, and at one point during the start of the recent pandemic, so overwhelmed and depressed because I felt so tired of being in the fight and felt helpless trying to figure out where to begin. Then I remembered what I told a student when they expressed their frustration to me that graduation was so far away. Of course, being my smart aleck self in a cheery and sarcastic voice, I opened the door to the classroom and said, it starts at the beginning. Go to class. You see, in our building, tough love is the most common type of communication. Caring for those in our building means to be honest and candid with them. The culture in our building even depends on the transparency and honesty of everyone in it. It means everyone understands their role in accomplishing goals. Somewhere along the way, I had not realized I needed to tell myself start at the beginning, go to class. I spent a month looking over and studying all the materials and notes I had taken from conversations from community leaders, members, volunteers, parents, and educators. I had over 400 meetings in the 3 years prior to COVID. I had no idea that material would become the foundation of the next conversation that needed to happen. And just to kind of include you guys in some of those things, here are some common themes from a lot of those meetings and notes. How failure comes through incentivizing the wrong outcomes in most systems. That nonprofits are great about doing the work of the mission, but not accomplishing the mission to great scale. We have a lot of meetings and not a lot of follow through in our community. Real meaningful connections are harder to come by because it is safer to remain at arm's length or through a computer screen. Real vulnerability is rare, and fear has become an underlying and unintentional factor in framing of branding, marketing, management, and messaging for many of our service, government, and nonprofit agencies. It is a fear of judgment. And to be clear, on this last one, fear is not a message or brand, but instead may prevent someone or an organization from doing something impactful because they fear a consequence or pushback. In a sense, it is a form of risk analysis. The next question was, why are these common themes? It is about the why if you want to get to the root cause. To do anything meaningful when people are involved, you must put yourself in their position, gain new perspectives, and use a strong sense of empathy. In short, I realized that every person who looks at any of these problems probably felt exactly the same way I did looking at them, overwhelmed and not quite sure where to begin. I was able to start seeing parts and pieces that already existed in our community and within our organization we could use. That is when I realized we had already started talking about using the Firebird logo due to its historical, cultural, and symbolic meanings, and how those tied very much into our students and community. I scribbled down some ideas on paper and started creating a framework with some amazing volunteers, many of you, in fact, and got the overall concept down. But there was still something missing about it. It kept feeling like it could get lost in the crowd of programs or volunteer groups. It needed a different feel, and everyone, including myself that looked it over, had a similar feeling like we had not given it the right edge and that it needed to have a different kind of swagger. So I reached out to many of you for coffee, conversation, and counsel. I would present ideas and thoughts and then just listened. Well, honestly, at least as well as an ADHD kid like me could listen. In the first group coffee session, the concept of step up or shut up and the shirts to go along with it were designed. Something as a business that took me a second to get comfortable with, but then it all started to tie in. Those who attended the meetings pointed out that almost everyone was ready to go beyond soft and passive language, but wanted it to be direct, to the point, and uncomplicated. As the weeks went on, the language was updated to be even more direct and more to the point. In fact, it is still being adjusted and tweaked to try to express accurately and succinctly both the needs and the call to action. Firebirds has become a challenge to those in our community to do more than speak about a problem, but to become an advocate and the living embodiment of valuing individuals and the academic and economic principles our mission stands for. This is our opportunity to look at our friends, family, coworkers, even the stranger at the coffee shop and say, I dare you. For those of you who choose to commit fully to be a Firebird, which is not a real big ask, will be recognized as members. We are working on a few special ways to recognize your commitment with area businesses on our website and more. You will even get one of the coolest membership cards in town. Firebirds was created as a community, and as a community, we will have to decide to rise together.